Together.
Mateva rakshati hiteva hite niyunte Kanteva chakira mayatyapaniya dukham Kirtim chadikshu vitanoti tanoti lakshmim Kim nasatyayati kalpalate vavidya Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvina Vadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahe Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Undiscriminating people, full of desires, are addicted to action, get lost in rituals, in the belief that pleasure and power are superior births and are the highest attainments. Okay, so this word ritual has two connotations. The first connotation of a ritual is, as we explored last week, is that it's used to focus the mind. It's used to help the mind to single-pointedly stay with one theme so that it's trained to inquire without swaying away. And the second theme in the context of the verse is that people in the spiritual world especially tend to get over-excited and over-interested in rituals. What this means is they will, for example, just engage in ongoing prayers or ongoing worship or ongoing pujas or ongoing devotion to God or ongoing, just gratitude or ongoing any kind of action which is meant to bring one closer to the truth. So even in yoga world, this happens very often, is that people will tend to see yoga as the end, not the means. So, and we see this even in India, where 99% of it is actually dualistic bhakti. Now, it's not bad because it's one step better than putting devotion into material objects in the world. So it has one step higher. But nevertheless, the danger is getting stuck in rituals. And so that's why we're bringing this verse, and that is they get addicted and get lost in rituals. If anyone has an experience of this in their pursuit of knowledge or pursuit of the spiritual goal, you can definitely relate, where the ritual in itself will become the end and not the means, which means our job is to keep our attention on what is my end versus what is this practice or this ritual meant to do. And the answer to any ritual as to what it's meant to do is purify the mind. There is no other reason why a ritual exists. Are we clear on that point? Okay. Before we continue on to the next portion of this text, I would like to put the teaching aside and get us into a inquiry mode, into inquire into our experience, how our experience happens ongoingly and how it remains uninvestigated. So, all we need to do is just follow along and have all eyes, all ears opened, because this is one of the most important teachings for collapsing duality, collapsing the idea that there is space between you and I. Okay, it's called location of objects. And we're going to start by asking you, how do you know that this room is going on right now? How is it that you know that all of this is going on right now?
You're aware of it.
Yeah. So there is an awareness. Okay.
See it.
Senses,
with your eyes when
That's
you're
right.
seeing it.
So, very good. So there is clear awareness of this experience in this room right now. But the question is, because of what is this experience known? So before we answer that, we're going to go all the way from the beginning and arrive to this answer by step. So, what's happening right now is we are all having an experience of this room. We can all agree with that. And we're seeing different objects, we're hearing sounds, and we're feeling feelings, and we're smelling smells. So that means the eyes are seeing, the ears are hearing, and all of the senses are working. And because of the senses, that is the 5 organs of action, or 5 organs of knowledge, not action, of knowledge, that means they are organs which provide us knowledge of the environment. Clear so far? Hello, Anand. Okay, so they are organs of knowledge. But the question is it really that simple? Do the eyes see by themselves? Do the ears hear by themselves? No. So there's something more going on. And the answer is, unless your mind is participating, even though your eyes and your ears are hearing and seeing, you're not going to hear and see. For example, did you ever have an experience where you were reading a book and you were so immersed in the book, in the storyline, whatever it was, and someone calls your name and you don't hear? Why is that? Because all of the senses are working, in this case the ear is working, but it wasn't registered. Why is that? Because the mind is not participating in hearing. It is participating in the object of matter, in this case the book. So despite the senses working, they have no place to bounce off. That is your mind. It's like taking a flashlight, a really powerful flashlight, and I point it to the sky. It doesn't matter how powerful that flashlight is, because it's not bouncing on anything, so I will not see its power. Similarly, when a sense organ, that is the eyes or the ears, or any kind of smell, is sending a signal onto a mind which is not participating, it's as good as turning on the flashlight and shining it into the sky. It will just completely fade away. There will be no place to be reflected on. Follow me so far? Okay. Okay, so far we have established 2 points. One is that the senses pick up your experience of this room, your eyes, and the second is that the eyes and ears are sending and bouncing that off onto the screen of your mind. Think about this. The senses, in this case the ears and the eyes, are picking up this entire experience, and nobody can deny that this experience is not happening, can you? You can't say that this experience is not happening, and we're all having the same experience. So the senses are then sending the signal to the mind, they're casting the data from the external world onto the mind. That means everything you're experiencing right now, you're experiencing your mind. Not out here, but you're experiencing this room, this projector, this sound, this character in your mind, onto the screen of your mind. That means this whole room is shining on the screen of your mind. Are we clear so far on that? Okay. All right. So that means we're not denying that this experience is not happening or there's no such thing as this room. We're simply saying that all of the contents that you experience, whether it's this room or outside, are only because of these contents of the world coming through your senses and shining onto the screen of your mind. Very important to get this. Okay. All right, so now let's do a little experiment. And I'm going to draw this so we can see it. Let's take the eyes, for example. So let's say, what do you see here? A remote. So what's happening now is we have the eye, and it's receiving the remote. Obviously the light is reflecting off the remote, and it's entering the eye. It's going to the back of the eye, called the retina, and the remote is appearing on the back of the eye so far. That's what's happening. And the remote on the back of the eye is upside down. We know this from science. So if the remote key is this way, in this case, it will be like that. It's upside down. Now, receptors in the back of the eye convert this light into nerve impulses and send these nerve impulses through the optic nerve to the back of the brain. In the case of the left eye, it sends it to the right brain. In case of the right eye, it sends it to the left brain so far. And the back of the brain, this remote appears as a remote on the screen of your mind. Clear so far? So it doesn't really matter if it's a sound, if it's a taste, a touch, it all enters the sense, it's processed by the brain, and it is cast onto the screen of your mind. Okay, so now we'll continue the inquiry with, okay. All right, so now, considering there's a screen of that mind, how do you know what the contents are on the screen of that mind, your mind? How do you know that? Considering this entire experience is occurring in your mind, in case of the visual, on the back of the brain, how do you know what the contents are presented on the screen of the mind? Who is that one which knows about that mind or the contents on the screen of that mind? You, consciousness, the awareness. So how do we know this? It's evident. Your experiences suffice. Your experience says that alone. That you cannot help yourself but to constantly be alert and aware of what? Of the contents of your mind. In other words, all of the sense organs of knowledge are constantly feeding signals, and they are processed in the brain and onto the screen of your mind. A brain is just a gross expression of the mind and of the subtle. When I say the mind, I mean the subtle body. Okay? I'm not just saying the mind, the emotions, the intellect, and ego. I mean the entire subtle body. So the brain is just a gross manifestation of your subtle body. So it doesn't matter if we talked about the brain or we talk about the subtle body. Just like a vasana or a physical desire is an expression of the vasana. A brain is a gross manifestation of the subtle body. Okay, so it is clear that you are aware of everything cast upon your mind, including this remote. It appears like the remote is here, doesn't it? But now we've got a little problem, because now we explained that the mechanics, that the light is reflecting into your eye, and it's actually appearing in your brain. So then why do we say the remote is here? Is it really here? Okay, we're going to get to this just a little bit further. Before we do, I said, who is aware of the contents of your mind? The answer is Atman, consciousness. Now, this is a new term we're bringing in. What is Atman? I did not say Brahman, I said Atman. I'll explain what Atman is and what's the difference between Atman and Brahman. For now, just think of Atman as consciousness. Okay? So that means you, Atman, are aware of the contents of this, that are cast on your mind. All right. So now, that means whatever experience, whether it's external or internal, they are both cast onto the contents of your mind. That means a thought, we call this a gross thought, that is no more or less cast onto the mind than feeling or an emotion or a thought. So that means if an emotion comes up, guess what? It's also cast onto your mind. And who's watching the mind? Who's watching the contents of this mind? Atman, consciousness, you. So that means that because there is never nothing happening, or you could say there is never not something happening, that means the mind is always filled with data, whether it's data of the outside or the data of the inside. And because it's always being shone on by consciousness, guess what happens? That means consciousness constantly mixes itself with the contents of the mind. That means the I, Atman, gets interrelated or intermixed or entwined with the contents of the mind. And what do we just say? When is something not happening? Never. You cannot find a single moment when something's not happening. And the eye is always shining onto that screen, which is always filled with data. That means that eye is constantly taking on the experience or thinking it's the experience or the data or the contents presented on the mind. Follow me so far? So that means the light shining onto the contents of sickness, that is the body gets sick, that experience is felt in the mind. Because remember, we said the subtle body is that place where all experience happens. So the feeling of sickness is cast on the mind, and since the eye is always shining on the mind, the eye claims I am sick. There's an expression of clarity in the mind, and since the eye is always shining on the mind, the eye claims I am clear. There is knowledge of, there's clarity about everything. There is a thought of self-realization. There's a thought of moksha shining on the mind or filling the contents of the mind. And since the eye is always shining on the mind, then the eye claims I am enlightened. There is ignorance on the mind. And since the eye is always shining on the mind, the eye claims I am ignorant. There is confusion on the mind, and since the eye is always shining on the mind, eye claims it's confused. That means it doesn't matter whether it's moksha, ignorant, confused, clear, passionate, joyful, peaceful, healthy, sick. It doesn't matter what the word is. They are all being shone onto the mind. And what's shining on the mind? You. That means you have nothing to do with moksha, you have nothing to do with ignorance, you have nothing to do with peace, nothing to do with joy, nothing to do with clarity, nothing to do with confusion, nothing to do with anything. What do we just say? When is something not happening? Never. That means there's always something happening, and it's only happening why? Because it's being cast onto the screen of your mind, which is being illumined by whom? you. That means no matter what experience is cast on your mind, that experience is not I. That's called anatma, not self. And the one that's shining Atman, that is me. So it's no wonder it's so hard to discriminate between I and not I. And no wonder it's so hard to discriminate my experience from myself. You understand so far? Okay. So now we're going to go into a formula for collapsing duality in the light of this teaching. The formula goes A equals B, B equals C, and C equals A. So that means C comes back to A. A equals B, B equals C, and C equals A. Okay. What do you see here? Okay. Where do you see this hand? Trick question. Okay. So if we say if you say you see the hand here, then we have a problem, don't we? Because then we're affirming duality. We're affirming space. And with space comes time, because there's a certain time that the light has to travel to your eyes. So that would be a problem, wouldn't it? So we say the hand is where? The hand is in me. So the hand is A. A is what? An object of experience. And where is the hand appearing? In the mind. We just said the mind. That's the next step. So sense, and then the mind. Mind is B. So object is A. Mind, that is where this object is being cast on your mind, that's B. Follow me? Okay. Now, how far away are you meaning what? Consciousness, from your mind? How far away are you, the observer of your mind, away from your mind?
No distance.
What's the distance between a mirror and the reflection on the mirror? What's the distance between the wall and the projection on the wall? So what's the distance between the contents of your mind and you, consciousness? So now, how can you say that I'm appearing, how can you say Andre is here when Andre is appearing in you? So that means Andre, or the hand, is A, is appearing in B, the mind, and you, C, consciousness. There's no space between you, consciousness, and B, the mind, where all experience is. That means what? There's no space between this character and you. And now C equals A. C, consciousness, equals A. That's the logic. Why is that? Because why is the hand then consciousness? Because we just said, hand is appearing in you, A is appearing in you, and there is no space between you and that which appears in you. Therefore, that which appears in you must be consciousness. Because you say there's no space between you and that which appears in you. That which appears in you, that is the hand, or this character, is consciousness taking on the form of a hand. Consciousness taking the form of a remote. Consciousness taking a form as you're feeling. Consciousness taking on a form as an emotion, as a subtle thought, as an external thought. It doesn't matter. We call this a gross thought. A memory is just a subtle thought. Either way, it is being that A is being presented to you, the mind. B, there's no space between you, consciousness, which is C, and the mind. So therefore, consciousness must also be the object that is witnessed. So now tell me, what is here other than consciousness? Knowing that everything is appearing in you, and you are the witness of yourself in a form of a remote, yourself in a form of a hand, yourself in a form of a room, yourself in a form of a sound, yourself in a form of any sense or any data that is known to you by the five senses. That means this whole room, this whole world, every character is nothing but an appearance in you, and there is no space between you and the appearance, no duality. Therefore, there is only you here. You need to take home this teaching and contemplate it, because this teaching alone is enough for collapsing duality. You need to inquire on it. It's called location on objects. Some people get it, some people don't. It takes a while.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
So is it correct to say that the contents of consciousness is consciousness
Yes.
itself?
Yeah, because the content of the mind is also conscious, because we say there's no space between consciousness and the mind, so therefore whatever is the mind is also consciousness. See, like I said with the flashlight, if I shine the flashlight into nothing, then there is no way for it to reflect. Because, see, I can only tell the strength of the flashlight if I shine it onto something. So that means any experience that is shone onto the mind, that's why it's known. But the mind is always known, no matter what content is shone onto the mind in the form of the five senses, is always known by the witness, from which there is no space between the content of the mind and the witness, eliminating the mind as the mind and claiming that is actually also consciousness. Because we said there's only mind. This is your mind right now. This room is your mind. So that means the remote is as good as the mind. This is your mind right now. And there is no space between you and your mind. So you are witnessing yourself right now in you. This entire room, this entire world is just you appearing in yourself. The Buddhists would say there's only mind, so there was.
So to expand the equation, the contents of there is no your consciousness and my consciousness.
That's right.
So there is consciousness which you experience as a subtle body, the same as the consciousness I experience as a subtle body.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to get to that teaching now, using an analogy. We're going to go into this teaching a little bit deeper. Okay, so now an objection comes up. And the objection is, all right, now if this consciousness is limitless, it's unlimited, then why is there a feeling of limitation? Yeah, good objection. Uh-oh, how do we get out of this one? Okay, so let's explain with an analogy. Imagine there's a garden, and in the garden are trees, and grass, and there's a bucket of water. And it's a clear day, so the sun is clearly shining onto everything upon the garden. The sun is clearly shining on the objects of the garden. Now, would you see a reflection of the sun on a tree? No. See, you would in a sense, because it's kind of reflecting, that's why you can see the tree, because it's sort of reflecting the light, but you won't see the sun. Will you see the sun on the grass? No. Will you see the sun on a bucket filled with clear water? Okay. So that means even though the sun is shining and illuminating all content. It is only when an appropriate reflecting medium is called, no, it doesn't say here. Reflecting medium is a subtle body. So this is a new term we're bringing in. Subtle body, reflecting medium. It's only when a proper reflecting medium is present can the sun be reflected and known. So in this example, the physical bucket is the body, that which houses the water, which is the subtle body, the reflecting medium. A bucket is called the jiva, by the way. So that means there is a body and there is a subtle body as water. So that means that the sun, when it's reflecting off that bucket, would you see it on the bucket? Okay, now that reflection is called Atman. The original light is called Brahman. Now, what's the difference between Brahman and Atman, using this analogy?
Manifestation in his body is Atman.
Yeah, good. So, okay, so yeah, or is there a difference between the original light, the sunlight, and the reflection on the water? Is there a difference? Yes and no. Because the reflection is only possible because of the original light. So that means the reflection essence is the same essence as the original light essence. You understand? So that means the sun light is equal to the reflection light in the subtle body. But the reflected light in the subtle body is not the original sunlight. So the reflection is the sunlight, but at the same time, it's not the sunlight. Understand so far? Okay, so now, what happens if the bucket is agitated? What happens to the water? Yeah. Would you still see the sun if the water, that is your mind, is shaky? Would you still see the sun? Kind of, right? There will be a lot of, like, little bit of reflection here and there. So what does that mean? That means if the mind is rajasic, passionate, moving, that's what movement is. Rajas is movement. That's as equal or as good as saying it's like shaking the bucket. And you will not see or will not be interested in the self, called Brahma Vidya, the self-knowledge, if it's hard to see the reflection of the original. So that means, in a metaphorical sense, the more we calm our minds down through sadhana, through karma yoga, the more we still the bucket. And how is that done? Karma yoga, lifestyle changes. You see? That means because every lifestyle has a particular tone to it. And if a lifestyle has a tone of movement, then guess what? It's like shaking the bucket. And it's not going to reflect that original light. And one's going to feel like I am not getting it. The self-knowledge is not working. And they're going to go and skip onto a next school, onto a different thing, because they think it's not working. Well, they're right. It's not working. Why is it not working? Because the mind's shaky. Now, what happens if we make the water murky? Because we talked about clear water so far. Now we got another component. What happens if we add mud into the water? What's that analogy for? Tamas. So that means, okay, will muddy water reflect the light better than shaky water? Or worse? Worse, that's right. Because on the reflection, pure water, shaking, you can still see sparkles. But on a muddy water, it's looking at a tree. So that's where karma yoga comes. Turning that mud and extracting it out of the mind so that we can cultivate rajas. If you feel like sleepy, or you sleep a lot, or feel tired or lethargic, that's a good sign there's a lot of tamas in the body. That means for you there would be especially a recommendation for karma yoga, because we need to go from tamas to rajas and then rajas into sattva. That's the purpose of karma yoga. Sattva is like a pure, clean bucket of water. Now, this is related to your inquiry, Anand. Let's say now we add 5 buckets. We were sticking with 1 bucket so far. Now we have 5. Never mind 7 billion jivas. Let's just say 5 for simplicity. So what does that mean? That means every bucket is now going to have what? A different texture of quality of water. Is that not true? Yeah. Some bucket has murky water, some bucket has clean water, some bucket has such pristine, unbelievably pure water. Some bucket is shaky, some bucket is still. So that means the experience of an individual is directly related to the quality and the texture of their mind, their water. That's what determines one's personality. That is the constituent, not only the constituents of which guna dominates, that is whether the water is murky or it's clear, in that case the rajas, but also the vasanas are also another constituent which are causing the water to be in a certain manner, whether it's shaky or whether it's still. So we got 2 things up against us, don't we? Raja, Tama, Sattva, management. We're going to get into Triguna management, but also Vasana, which is causing the bucket to either shake or not shake. In this case, the Vasanas cause the bucket to shake, give movement, and the 3 gunas, whichever is dominant in your body, is the equivalent to whether the water is murky or clear. Okay. So now, one light, the sun, is shining on many buckets. One light, one sun, is shining on many buckets, giving each bucket an experience. And yet each bucket is what then? Fighting over whose water is clearer, how you should clean that water, your water is not good enough, you should get into a different kind of, you should put some chlorine in your water, get some more knowledge there. All buckets are fighting, and yet they're all illumined by one source, by one light. Now, next part is, does the original light, or is the original light contaminated by the reflection? No. So that means even if the original light is shining on a terrible, destructive world, or a beautiful heavenly world, what difference does that make to the original light? 0. Does the sun, the physical sun, care if the earth explodes right now? No, it keeps shining. That means that sun, I am, is completely free of the contamination of the water or the movement of the water or the world or anything or any word imprinted onto the screen of the mind. That light, I am. So Vedanta is about re-identifying from the contents of the water, the bucket, to the original light. Not only is it about cultivating the 3 gunas, because the 3 gunas are the ones that change the quality texture of the mind, murky or clear, but also about managing vasanas through karma yoga, because the vasanas, every vasana we said is a desire. It externalizes the mind. It causes the mind to go and be attracted to the world and do something. It's the difference between a meditator being able to stay 2 hours in meditation and one who just gets out of it. Because the vasanas are so strong that one just is compelled to act them out. And as long as they're compelled to act them out, just imagine all life trying to act out these vasanas. That means the whole life gets spent in dharma, artha, and kama, basically. So we got 2 sadhanas so far. Guna management and vasana. Vasana through karma yoga. Guna management we will get to later in this course. Okay. So, now that will conclude our teaching for this. Any questions before we move on to Karma Yoga, onto the scripture? All right. For them, okay, so rituals in the belief that pleasure and power or superior births are the highest attainments. This is for samsaris. For them, for samsaris, liberation does not take place because the subject matter of the ritualistic portion of the Vedas has two portions, Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda, concerns only to the three qualities of nature, which they are Sattva, Raja, and Tamas. Sattva is all about feeling good. We know this in the spiritual world of being stuck in Sattva, very peaceful. They have a graceful movement around them, beautiful aura. It's all about just being really tranquil. That's called stuck in Sattva. And a lot of people mistake that as moksha because it feels so good. If everything's just great, like I'm totally happy with the world and I've got no problems. That's one of the cautionary signs of being stuck or being interested in the ritualistic portion. Because meditation is also a ritualistic portion if you think about it. Okay, or rajas, that is do. What can I accomplish? What can I do? What can I achieve? That is building a family, kids, all exciting life, all that whole exciting, passionate life where, rainbow and moonlight, and it's just, let's just talk and put a candlelight and just, have a great time. That's rajas, very exciting. And tamas, of course, is, tamas is also stability. It's also a sense of groundedness, because if you think about sleep is just total tamas. The mind's totally covered in tamas. And it's very settling. So we're not saying completely eliminate the tamas and rajas. We're just saying manage the gunas accordingly so that they play out the most appropriate order for the functioning of the jiva. Okay. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the three gunas. Okay, so here we have a little picture summary. The non-discriminating between, that is, I don't know what is me and who is not me. That's what this implies. Their main concern is, sports and fun and World Cup and netball, whatever it is, just the world. Now, we're not saying anything's wrong with that, just that if the whole life is spent in Artha, Dharma, Artha, and Kama, then, as we said last time, it's as good as just throwing your life away, considering only a human being is blessed with Sukshma Buddhi, which is that Buddhi used to discriminate Satya from Mithya. And to throw that gift away as a human being is literally giving the finger to the Lord. Like, thank you, Lord, but I'm just going to use this to, indulge. So now we know the importance of pursuing moksha. Okay, so the hindering gunas. We have rajas, which is desire, and it always wants to do. We have tamas, lethargy, fatigue, tiredness. It's avoidance. So one is towards, one is away. Fear is tamas. Attraction or desire is rajas. Now we have sattva cultivation, which needs to be dominant. That's why the man is pointing up there for Vedanta to work. And we use the analogy of the bucket of water, which needs to be still. And only through the stillness of that water can the knowledge and the seeds of knowledge take place. That's the difference between someone coming to Vedanta for years and years and years, and it still hasn't quite, it hasn't got him. It's still all a mystery. And those who come for 1 month, 2 months, sometimes a year or 2 years, and instantly get it. We see this all the time. Depends on your mind. That's why we offer you karma yoga to guarantee that sense of tranquility. Yeah. Okay, so the benefits of sattva guna are free from anxiety, of acquiring and protecting. That means any kind of protection or the need to acquire, accumulate, aggrandize, all of that is just a fuel or a result of the Raja guna. In fact, when we go through the 3 gunas, all personality profiles will be transparent. You can see easily through people, through things. Like take weather, for example, rainy and windy. What is that? That's Rajas. Take a sunny, calm day, a very calm, tranquil day. What is that? That's Sattva. Take a very dark, murky day. What is that? That's Tamas. So these 3 gunas are the first components in creation, and because of them, everything is composed out of the constituents of these 3 gunas. Very interesting when we get into how gunas create and how to manage our gunas. Okay. Clarity, that's sattva. So whenever you experience clarity about certain things, that's when sattva is dominant. Whenever we experience fuzziness or we're having some trouble understanding or getting the concept, that just simply means there is tamas or veiling power at that time, or rajas, because rajas is like it's like ripples, and whatever you put on a ripple, it just carries it away. So nothing sticks. That's the problem with rajas. Okay, and all discrimination and intelligence is only possible through a sattvic mind. So we can see the importance of sattva cultivation. All right. Release yourself from the grip of rajas and tamas and the pairs of opposites, in other words, duality, and establish yourself in sattva, free of the anxieties related to acquiring and protecting, a master of yourself. A master of yourself. What does this mean? Okay. Master of yourself, first and foremost, conform to your dharma. Why? Because dharma is inbuilt. At the time of creation, dharma is already present. Dharma is, in terms of the macrocosm, all the rules, all the laws, all of that which makes the universe work the way it does. That's dharma. If we go against our dharma, the natural sign of that 10 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 times would be guilt or some kind of frustration or something feels off. That is usually a sign of violating one's dharma. So that means if one's following their dharma constantly, it's nearly impossible to feel these negative emotions. They're just signatures or signs that something or some place I've gone wrong, or I'm choosing the wrong path out of what? My vasanas, which are telling me I like this, when in fact Ishvara is trying to get me to steer the other way. And how do I know? If guilt is present, it's usually a good indicator that I'm probably on the wrong track. Okay. And how do we conform to Dharma? One of the best and clearest ways is to ask, is this serving the total or is this serving me? Selfish versus selfless. So that means, once again, if the Dharma is being conformed to me or for my vasanas, then, as I said, guilt will arise. if Dharma is being conformed for the whole, then it would seem like everything's fine, everything's just flowing, there's no problems in life. Okay. How else do we, or are we going to be a master of ourself? Grace is earned. This is a very interesting phrase by my teacher, James. And this actually goes against what we hear in the spiritual world, and that is, you just got to surrender to God. Yes and no. Because if we just surrender and wait, what's going to happen? If I just wait? Nothing. We're just going to keep replaying the same vasanas. And then we're going to justify that, God's supposed to bless me one day. It doesn't work like that. You need to work at this. Just like with anything, like starting a business, like courting a partner, we need hard work. Just like these men are putting bricks, and it's not always pleasant. Sometimes it feels like we're not getting anywhere, but that's the only way. So like with anything, we need to put hard work into it. So grace is earned. That means moksha is earned. Not given. It is given if you put work into it. Okay. Therefore, you must act. Okay. How else to be a master of ourself? Through karma yoga. All right. So, karma yoga neutralizes vasanas. We talked about this. Now, why does it neutralize vasanas? Because karma yoga is an action. And we spoke that actions reinforce our vasanas. Now, how is karma yoga, knowing it's an action, supposed to neutralize vasanas if it's also an action?
Because the action is for, is the difference.
Yeah, good. So the answer here is because we are surrendering our actions to Ishvara, that is God. And we are understanding that Ishvara is authoring not only the jiva's actions, but also Ishvara is facilitating the results of jiva's actions. Ishvara too is described in the scriptures as three parts. Jagat Karanam, world creator. That is the one who creates the world. Dharma Raja, that is the king of Dharma. And Karma Phala Data, Karma, action, Phala, fruit, Data, giver. The giver of the fruits of jiva's actions. Think about that. The one who gives you the fruits, fruit means the benefit, the reward of jiva's actions. That means, as we said, grace is earned through work. Why do we say that? That means the one that is going to grace because of your work is Ishvara 2, part 3, Karma Phala Data, the one that graces your hard work. So the logic of karma yoga is we are devoting and surrendering all of our actions to that one who is the king of Dharma, who is the giver of the fruits of your actions, and who creates all of your actions and the world all the time. That one is the only solace we have to what? To remove our ignorance. See the logic here? That means we are serving Ishvara, that one who is going to give us moksha, who is going to remove our ignorance, revealing who we already are. So therefore, karma yoga is understanding that Ishvara to God is the one who gives all your rewards, is the one who creates the world, the one who creates your emotions, the one who creates your experience, the one who creates this room. There is only God here. And that one is constantly what? moving and controlling everything. Therefore, there is no choice but to surrender to Dharma Raja, the king of Dharma, to the Jagat Karanam, to the world creator, and to the Karma Paladata, because you are never separate from God. So therefore, Karma Yoga, once again, is understanding these three parts and gladly offering all of yourself to that one. Now, knowing that Ishvara is these three parts, could we say then that we create? A jiva. Could we say that the jiva creates? No. Because jiva is Ishvara. Or Ishvara is acting through the jiva. The ocean is what? Animating the wave. So that means there is no choice but to conclude that there is only Ishvara here, and you cannot be responsible for anything because there is only God here. There is only the ocean animating billions of jivas and forms in form of waves. So how can you claim ownership if you didn't create the world? How can you be responsible for your feelings if you didn't even cobble up your emotions? How can you claim the fruits of your actions and say, this is my achievement, I have done it, when Ishvara is the one who has provided you that? How can you claim that we are more or less than someone else when it's Ishvara, the one who is the king of Dharma, and because of the king of Dharma, I get to express what is right and wrong, only by the help of Ishvara. There is no choice but to surrender to God. And Karma Yoga is this attitude that it is completely safe to do so because God is everywhere, and God is the same one who has brought you to this place, and God is the same one who has got you through all of these life circumstances in order to come to the final journey. So why not surrender to that principle? Why not trust that principle? Yes, it seems like sometimes life is tough and it's not working, but so what? We need to go through that in order to move on. How many circumstances unpleasant have we already gone through here in this room? Lots. We had divorces, we had marriages, we had breakups, we had lost business, we had made money, so many things, and yet here we are right now, completely safe learning this. So that means God is your friend. And Karma Yoga's job is to remind us and to honor and worship that one, because there is only God here. And Ramana, one of my favorite teachers, he makes a very beautiful quote. He says, surrendering to God is as equal to moksha. Think about that. Surrendering to God is as equal to moksha. Whether you surrender or whether we get this, it doesn't matter. Because why would it say that? Why would it say that surrendering to God is good as moksha?
Because you are that.
Yeah, you are that already. Yeah. So that means, for example, in the Bhakta world, you'll see this in India in certain places, where they're just totally surrender. If you talk to them about self-knowledge, they're not interested in moksha. They're like, this is for goofy people, intellectual. They're just totally in love with the Lord. It's as good as moksha. Because what are you saying then if you're totally in love with the Lord? I am not in control. I surrender to karma, paladata, to raja, dharma, and jagat karanam.
Is it the same as loving oneself?
Yeah. The highest, Ramana, for example, his message is always, why go and worship things, because everything is consciousness, when you can just worship that one who knows because of which things are worshipped. In other words, why not just worship my own existence? Because because we just did the mind thing. Everything is in me anyway. So why don't I just worship that awareness, which is God itself? That's God. Your awareness, your existence. That's it. That's why we say it's never away from you. Who is not conscious right now? So you're what? You're just affirming. You are what you're seeking, because you already have awareness. Who does not have awareness here? Nobody. That awareness is the self. And you can never be apart from it. You cannot try to not exist. No matter how much you try, you cannot never not... You can't not exist. That means what? Your existence itself. Existence cannot go out of existence, because there is only existence. So that one, existence, is what Ramana is talking about, worshipping that one. So that means a yani doesn't need to go and worship, like statues and Shiva and Krishna and so on. They just look within. Okay, this is it. I am that. Like Nisargadatta would say, I am that. You see? So it depends on your predisposition, but it doesn't really matter end of the day.
Is this a more yani path, what we're doing?
This is Jnana Yoga is understanding you are the self, yeah. And Karma Yoga is if Jnana Yoga fails. So that means Karma Yoga is only for those who do not get Jnana Yoga. That's the only reason.
Which you could do both.
There are two paths. Now, another question comes up is, it's not about, okay, so what, should I just do Karma Yoga and then move on to the Jnana Yoga? It doesn't work like that. They are simultaneous, because it's the whole. So how can I exclude one if everything is me? That means we perform Karma Yoga simultaneous or parallel to Jnana Yoga, parallel to Bhakti Yoga. This is the experience if you watch these lovely beings who are, teaching, and they're called Mahatmas. They're totally into devotion. They will just bow down and pray, as a symbol of worship of the Lord, in a form of Shiva or Jesus or Buddha or whoever you want. They will also share knowledge, and they will also perform Karma Yoga. Three paths at once.
Jnana is knowledge, right?
Yeah, Jnana Yoga is knowledge, yeah. Jnana Yoga is the easy path. If you get this, then you don't have to go through Karma Yoga, because you can easily just discriminate, well, this feeling is just mithya, and you just wash it away. But a Karma Yoga it's not that easy. They really, fall into their emotion and then make a little bit of a deal out of it. But then they can release that by knowing that, well, this emotion doesn't belong to me. Or if it does, I am offering it back to Ishvara, as we just discussed. In other words, any action through a Karma Yogi is an action done out of love of Ishvara. But a Jnana Yogi doesn't need to do that. A Jnana Yogi can just look and inquire, okay, who's aware of this? Because of whom is this experience known? Me? It just falls away instantly. Yeah. So there is an advantage with Jnana Yoga. Yeah.
But there's still action from the person who's performing Jnana Yoga, right?
Yeah, okay, so
the karma comes
sure.
into picture anyways, even after realization. Let's say that I've discriminated, but still I continue to act based on the dharma, which is the situation.
Sure, however, now it's not building karma anymore, because I know that one to whom karma is being built, that's not me. But karma only gets built when I take it personally, when I take this person is me, whom gains karma. So obviously I'm going to own the responsibility. But once I realize that the karma is on the individual and not me, onto Andre, who I am not, then what does it matter if Andre goes to jail, or Andre teaches, or Andre does whatever he does? It doesn't touch me. So that means that a Jnana Yogi sees that. So to them it doesn't matter what's being done, because they know it's just Ishvara animating this body, moving this mouth, but I'm just witnessing it. Karma Yogi doesn't necessarily get that, so for them we prescribe, okay, that's fine, just act in a manner of offering to Ishvara because everything is Ishvara, everything is God. So that's why we offer 3 paths, because it depends on your temperament. And Bhakti Yoga, of course, Bhakti Yoga is for those who are emotional. That's why Bhakti Yoga, Bhakti deals with the mind. So if we're, totally emotional and constantly have certain feelings about people and things and ourselves and our past and our history, then we give you how to channel that emotion into devotion. Emotion to devotion. In other words, emotion expressed without any guidance. What's the benefit of that? Nothing. You're just playing back your vasanas. But if you take that and you direct it towards devotion to the Lord, then you are keeping your mind on the Lord. And we just said what? Surrender to the Lord is as good as moksha. All right. For someone who knows the self, rituals are as meaningless as a small puddle when a land is flooded. So that's what we're talking about. Now, why does he use this example? Because a puddle is a big deal when there's no rain. But when everything's flooded, then you just don't even notice the puddle. So for a yani, these rituals, this worship, this prayer, this karma yoga, it's just a joke, literally. It's like, okay, it's nice, it's beautiful, but it's unnecessary. See the difference there? Yeah. It doesn't exclude karma yoga and bhakti yoga from a yani. A yani is a wise person. It just means that it doesn't need to be included to discriminate between satya and mithya.
They have less binding karmas that have done more work, so they're not as bound.
Who? A karma yogi?
Yeah, yoga. They've already done the work to dissolve the...
See, for them, no, they can't. They instantly let go, release the vasana, because they know that vasana is an appearance in me, and it doesn't belong to me. So, and there's nothing to gain. Think about it. An ego is the one that has something to gain. That's why vasana gets expressed. That's why I want to do things. Because there's an ego, a doer/enjoyer, who wants to gain something out of the expression of this vasana. But if I realize that vasana is not I, then who is there to gain anything? Nobody. Where is the I? The I has fallen off. So there's nobody to. So therefore, for a yani, the motivation for doing it simply doesn't come up. Despite it being present in the mind, like I want to participate, it has no power because that doesn't belong to me, and there is no I who is there to benefit by engaging into the action. But a karma yogi cannot help it. They need to engage in the world, and they will. So we say that's fine. You can engage in the world, and you probably will because your vasanas are so strong, but with a different attitude that you're releasing this to the Lord. If you remove that thought out of the mind, then that's just going to reproduce and strengthen the vasana. If you include the God thought, that it's actually God, this belongs to the Lord, not me, and this result, I cannot help it because I didn't create vasanas, I didn't create karma, I didn't create these actions. They're just acting through this body, so I cannot help but to release back to the Lord. And that exhausts the vasanas. You see? Instead of building, it exhausts. So it really does come back down to these two practices, exhausting the vasanas and managing the three gunas. Yeah. Ramana will say very nicely in many quotes, he says that liberation is, paraphrasing, it's not exactly what he says, but liberation is not possible as long as vasanas remain. Now, he doesn't mean that in a direct way. There's a sort of a twist there because, see, it doesn't matter if someone's smoking because that's a vasana. It doesn't mean they cannot gain moksha. it just doesn't hinder them. So let's say someone likes to smoke maybe once in every 5 hours, they can still get 5 hours of learning in between. But if the vasana is so strong that it causes them to smoke constantly, then how are you going to get time to contemplate, to inquire? So it really depends.
So the worst thing you can do is try and be spiritual.
Yeah, right. That's another role. Who's trying to be spiritual? Who remains?
If you're just trying too hard to,
putting beads on and white suit.
Yeah, just as you're speaking, I'm just realizing just how much to undo the vasanas.
Yeah.
That's what we're all trying to do, but it's just virtually impossible. It appears to be impossible.
Yeah, because you're not even responsible for your vasanas. I mean, you're just totally innocent. You're like, oh my God, why am I doing all this? What's happening?
So why can't we abandon them? And then that's where you're back to square one. And then you go, well, you're just caught in this thing. But
yeah. The irony is we have to also express them, because that's how vasanas get exhausted. For example, who's still playing with cars and toys and dolls from their childhood? Nobody. Why? Because we totally participated in that vasana.
Done that one.
Yeah, exactly. So same with, I have a very good friend from Germany, and he's like a chick magnet. And the only way he was able to exhaust his chick magnetism, vasana, was by just, being with a lot of girlfriends. So that was his way. But you don't have to go through that way, by the way. There's different ways.
Was that a project he took upon himself?
I was like, you're in Vedanta, right? Like all the chicks are after you're in Vedanta. So it doesn't really matter what, as long as you're acting intelligently and you know what the goal is. The goal should be exhaust those vasanas.
Just as you're saying that also, I thought people are what we would regard as mentally ill would appear to abandon a lot of vasanas, but the reason that we would categorize them as mentally ill is because they can't apparently deal with reality. They can't function independently of help or getting themselves in trouble. That's
karma.
But I mean itself, I don't really know how to interpret this, but someone who's mentally weak, you could say there's a huge vast set of vasanas there.
Yeah.
Or they are liberated, but it's a kind of liberation where they're not really functioning.
That would just be karma related. I mean, what is there? Because now the question comes: what about those handicapped people? Who or deaf people, blind people who don't get the privilege? Well, as we talked about, karma, we're carrying over from the previous life, so we have to exhaust that karma by being blind. It sounds cruel, but that's how Ishvara coordinates. For example, have you noticed in the World Cup recently? There's always two teams, obviously, on the field. Now, if to Ishvara, if to the Lord, everyone is loved equally, how is Ishvara supposed to choose which team wins, knowing that Ishvara is controlling the entire field? How is Ishvara supposed to choose? Because if he chooses the Portuguese, it means he probably likes the Portuguese more than the Italians. The answer is Ishvara operates by the needs of the total. That's why you can pray all you want for your team to win. You can pray all you want to exhaust the vasanas. You can pray all you want to gain liberation. But if it's not in Ishvara's plan, guess what? You're going to go on for quite a while praying. That's why we say surrender and love everything that happens to you, because it is only leading you to the highest. You just have to accept. That's our problem. We don't want to accept the bad stuff. We love the good stuff, but when it comes to the bad stuff, no, I don't deserve that. Yes, you do. Because that's the only way you're going to get onto the good stuff. I know it's painful. We all agree with that. But that's how Ishvara. To Ishvara, it doesn't care whether you care or not about your likes or dislikes. Only you care. Did you notice that? Only you care about your likes and dislikes. Nobody else cares. Not even Ishvara. You know why? Because Ishvara it's not Ishvara's problem. It's the Jiva's problem. Through Jiva Srishti, snake rope, through its own projection. So that means also Ishvara doesn't care whether you're enlightened or not. Did you notice that? Why? Because to Ishvara, everyone is the self. Only the contents of the mind, the thought I am ignorant on the screen of the mind, that belongs to the jiva, not to anyone else. That's why we say there's no such thing as enlightenment. You are already illuminating every content that is occurring on your mind. That one is free. The sun is free of the contents of the bucket. Only when the bucket identifies with the contents, that is the murky water or the shaky water, does that worry become personal. And that is our problem. So that means that Ishvara is that one whom is always leading you to the next step. And we need to get ourselves out of the way. It's the jiva that stands in its own way which hinders its path, nobody else. For example, somebody will come in every once in a while in a Vedanta class or any kind of class, and they will argue the teaching. Why? Because their own vasanas dislike, say, no, I do not agree with this. So they walk out prematurely, never gaining the full picture. In other words, their own vasana has compromised their success. That sounds kind of unfair, doesn't it? Because they had no control. They had no way to say, to create a like out of what they heard. They naturally disliked it. What do you think that comes from? Karma. That means they have to dislike that to walk out in order to then contemplate at some other time whether what they did was really worthy, or was it intelligent or was it unintelligent. That means you have to completely love and surrender to your vasanas, at the same time perform spiritual sadhana to exhaust them. Just surrendering is not enough. Working on them, now we're talking. 2 parts. Surrender. Part 2, exhaust the vasanas. There is no option for non-action. Oh, well, this is a supportive statement. There is no option for non-action. Only choice concerning the type of actions you do. So, why is there no option for non-action? Because Arjuna on the field wanted to not act. He thought that's the way out, just to not participate in life. Because he thought, well, if I don't participate, I'm not going to create karma. But guess what? Not participating, you're not playing out what you need to play out to move on. And not only that, but it says there is no option for non-action. Why? Because awareness is always shining on the causal body, and the causal body is that body which is causing the jiva to act and perform in the way that the jiva acts and performs. As long as awareness is shining on the causal body, you will always be acting. There is never a single moment when you are not acting. Even sleeping is an action. Action of sleeping. So that means there is no option for non-action. Only the choice concerning the type of actions you do. In other words, you do have a choice whether you can fall into or participate in an action that entails moving the bucket, which shakes the water, or engage in an action equivalent to settling the bucket, which stills the water. That is a prerogative for a human being that animals do not have. An animal tiger cannot decide to take a break off and just try vegetarian for one day. Not even one day. And neither can a deer, its prey, can decide to say, you know what, the grass is dry, I kind of had enough of all this vegetarian healthy stuff, I'm just going to have a little bit of meat today. You cannot do that. Even though the meat is facing it and it wouldn't really die. So that means that is our human privilege, to exercise choice. It's called purushartha. That is effort. Okay, so now we're talking, we're getting into the author. Okay, so there is also no choice of results, in other words, results which happen to you as a result of your action or result of your participation in the world. What you get back is not up to you. Why? Because Ishvara is karma paladata, jagat karanam, and dharmaraja. In other words, you are always interacting with the field and you have no choice how the field interacts back with you. This is a statement that the ego does not like to hear, but it's true. For example, let's say you want to move into a new place and you submit your application for the new place, tenancy. From that moment on, you had a free choice. You had free will. But do you have any choice from that moment on whether you get approved for the application or not? No. And how are you any better or worse than the next tenant? And how is Ishvara supposed to choose? According to the needs of the total. If that person gets the yes, that simply means it's way more beneficial for the whole for that person to get a yes than it would be beneficial for the whole if I got a yes. That's how Ishvara operates. So there is no choice of results because you are not the author of results. Next week we will delve into what the author is, that is Ishvara 2, and a couple of points about what Ishvara is. So where this is now going is we're getting educated what is God, because nobody's ever told us what God. It's just all a mystery up in the air. There's nothing mysterious about it. This is it. The field, your environment. This is it. So the more we know God, the more we are in love with God. It's that simple. The more we can surrender to God. The only reason a jiva does not want to surrender is because it's all a mystery. It's something apart, and I'm afraid. So we need to know what moves and what animates the entire world and has been animating it since day one, from time immemorial. Yeah. And then we're now delving deeper into karma, yoga, how to practice it, what it is, in much more detail, of course. And this is going to be interesting, the fruit of self-knowledge, moksha. What is the benefit of it? Okay. Let's do Purna. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.